Hey friends, it's Allison here, jumping in real quick before you get into all the juicy details of today's episode. Did you know there is just one more week left to our 200th episode giveaway where you have the chance to win a full ride scholarship to the Better Belly Blueprint? This is the way to heal your gut so that you can poop daily, ditch acid reflux, and balance your hormones even when nothing else has worked. Here's how you can enter. Leave a rating and review on the Better Belly podcast on Apple Podcast or Spotify between now and May 29th. Take a screenshot of that rating and review, then go to betterbellytherapies.com/giveaway and fill out our 200th episode giveaway form. You will automatically receive an email with a code for $200 off the Better Belly Blueprint, which you're going to get as soon as you send in that form. And then a full scholarship winner is going to be announced on May 30th and messaged by email. If you win, you're going to win a full scholarship to the Better Belly Blueprint. And if you don't win, you can still get $200 off, which is 20% off of the Better Belly Blueprint if you join by May 31st at midnight. So go ahead and leave a rating and review. Get that giveaway form filled out at betterbellytherapies.com/giveaway, and you can finally end your constipation, acid reflux, and PMS for good. In today's episode, we are going to be talking with Raina, a friend of mine who is a counselor with a master's in social work who is learning to spend money on her health by overcoming guilt. In Raina's case, she's been working through feeling guilt or shame about spending money on herself for her health, learning how to charge more from her clients so that she can afford to take care of her health, and learning to be okay with the fact that she may spend more money on her health than others around her are able to. As you are listening to the episode, I want to invite you to think about, is guilt or shame causing you to hold back in your health? Do any of Raina's stories or circumstances resonate with you? I know that for me in my past, I have dealt with a great deal of shame or guilt for supporting my health, and that has included me having free time to run, spending money on organic food, or even paying for a health practitioner to help me find the root cause of my health problems. I myself have felt like I should only take a certain route to health, or I'm sick because I haven't done something right, and so I don't deserve doing something more, or I shouldn't spend more than a certain amount on myself and my health. In today's episode, we are diving in with another woman who has a deep sense of care and love for others, and we are talking with her on how she is growing and also deeply loving and caring for herself. Welcome to the Better Belly podcast, where we find freedom from food restrictions, we increase energy in our lives, and we begin to feel more healthy and vibrant than ever by finding the root causes of our health problems. My name is Allison Jordan. I'm a marathon runner, functional medicine health coach, certified craniosacral therapist, gut health nerd, lover of Jesus, and owner of Better Belly Therapies, a clinic based in Ann Arbor, Michigan that works with both virtual and local clients to help them achieve the best health of their life. I am here to walk with you on your journey to a better belly and a better life. We're going to go beyond popping a probiotic and just checking out our poop. In this show, we are going to go deep into gut transformation strategies that last for your entire life. If you are ready to feel your best, get ready to roll. You are in the right place. And just as a reminder, this information is not meant to diagnose, manage, or treat disease. Always consult with your own health practitioner before you make any changes to your health. Awesome. So guys, I am so excited to have my friend Raina on the show today. Raina is a licensed master's in social work. She actually has two other degrees. She has two other certifications, which I actually don't even know what they are, MPH and CYT. Actually, Raina, can you share what are those?
Yeah, so I have a master's in public health, and then I'm a
Okay.
certified yoga teacher.
So she's really smart, and she's the way she uses all this information is so she's a somatic therapist, coach, and educator. And so somatic having to do with the body, she incorporates both body practices and the fact that our bodies are living corporeal beings, and engage that with our brain to help specifically release trauma and oppression, and improve our capacity to thrive. So other things that she believes, this is what she has told me. She believes that individual societal transformation is made possible when we center our bodies, pleasure, relationship, and culture in healing, which I'm all about. And through her work, she seeks to support others in living fully with presence and agency. Raina, thank you so much for being on the Better Belly podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. So the reason that I wanted to bring on Raina today is because we had an interesting conversation a few days ago. It was like, I don't know, a week ago. And I was like, Raina, can we have you on the podcast? And the conversation went like this. We were catching up, and because we've known each other for a few years now. And Raina you ended up saying something about like, Allison, I've been going through this transformation of money, and like how I see and you probably can honestly say it better, but basically how much you were willing to pay for your health, or how you were valuing your body and your health, both in your work and in self-care. And I was so fascinated by what you were sharing, and it felt just so clear. And we've kind of been going through a journey on the Better Belly podcast right now of really realizing that money can be a part of the reasons we're not getting better, or reasons we're struggling in that. So I wanted to start with the question, Raina. Can you tell us what your journey has been like on this transformation? And even if I mess something up, get right. tell the listeners what you've been experiencing.
Sure, yeah. So there was kind of a few different things happening in my life. Since grad school, I've been primarily working as a therapist, and I just wasn't exactly making the money that I needed to thrive. I was making enough to get by, which is very much part and parcel of like social work culture. I think many folks enter this field with this sort of framework that you're not in it for the money, because frankly, there's not a lot of money in helping professions, right? When we think about social workers, teachers, et cetera. I mean, doctors get paid a lot of money, but other than that, helping people is not something that's actually highly valued in our society and in our economy. And so I just wasn't making what I needed to make, but I was accepting it because I thought that this was the way it was supposed to be. And then last summer, I've struggled with chronic pain most of my life. I've had back injuries and other things, right? And I learned in the fall that actually my back injury was more severe than I realized. I've been living with a pretty stable fracture in one of my vertebrae that's now, developed arthritis, and it's potentially been there for up to 10 years. And my pain was just getting to the point where it was really impeding with my life. I have a puppy, and I was having difficulty walking her. I was starting to have difficulty doing things around my home. But I would go to physical therapy. I would get the, approved amount of sessions, and still have to pay most of the session fee, right? Because my insurance wasn't actually covering it. I didn't have a copay. And then, I would use up my sessions and I would be done, and I would notice myself like, okay, I'm fine, right, I'm fine. Just like trying to tell myself that I was fine when I wasn't. And so when I realized actually the severity of my injury, I realized that I had to really kick my self-care into gear. And frankly, I couldn't do that without money. Being self-employed, I have to purchase my own health insurance, and there's all the other overhead costs being self-employed, right? And unfortunately, I think for chronic pain, much of what people find resourceful are tools that are outside of what most insurance companies are going to reimburse. So some insurance companies reimburse for acupuncture, chiropractic, many do not, right? Craniosacral therapy, definitely not covered under my insurance plan.
Yes.
CBD oil, not covered under my insurance plan, right? So I literally needed to make more money to feel better. And I had a really enlightening conversation with a financial therapist and coach, Lindsay Bryan Podvin. Highly recommend her. Her business is,
yeah, what's her business name?
Her business name is Mind Money Balance. Yeah.
Did you say, is it like M-Y or M-I-N-D?
Like mind as in your mind.
Yeah.
Money balance.
Love it. We're going to put that in the show notes, y'all. Keep talking.
Yeah, she's great. She's got some freebies and a great book. But yeah, and I realized that I was making myself so accessible to my clients financially that my health and wellness was actually inaccessible to me. And that's like was a hard, pill to swallow,
can you,
so to speak.
Can you say it one more time too? Because guys, when I think you probably remember this, Raina, when she first said it to me, I think I like squealed or something. I was like, oh, that's amazing. What you said was so validating and powerful. And for people listening, like, I want you might not be a master's in social work or a counselor or something, but you might be a mom and you are that's a helping profession. Let me be real. It's a helping and very low paid, probably if you consider it, maybe, I guess you could consider it unpaid work. If you're a mom,
it's expected labor. Yeah.
And even if you just have a job where maybe you're not making as much, but say that again, Raina. I love it.
Yeah. So I realized that in making myself, overly accessible to everyone else, that my life and wellness was actually inaccessible to me.
Oh, so good. And keep talking. This is, and then you're really talking about boundaries, right? In some ways,
right.
What will you give yourself? And for some people, it's money. Like if you own a business, what will you sell yourself for, more or less? And other people, maybe it's your time and your boundaries. Like, can you say, honey, no, I need to have time alone. Asking a partner, like, can you help with XYZ in the house so that I can rest, or whatever it is. So what you're talking about, while we're talking about money, can also be applied to other areas of our lives, and we can see it seeping into other areas of our lives.
Yeah, totally. There are so many things that we accept as the way things are or should be, right, that keep us stuck. And I think for me too, as a Black woman, I noticed that the trend, especially in private practice and even for people who work at agencies, is that, we tend to want to work with the people who look like us, have our experiences. And so what happens is that a lot of therapists in private practice, Black therapists, end up just systematically making way less, right, than their white counterparts. So it really just became this, not just personal point of reflection for me, but also thinking about, systemically what this means and how to get out of that, right? I mean, I think there are many, many people who make less than, who are underemployed, right? And we know that tends to be women, people of color, queer folks, right? Yeah.
Right.
So go ahead.
And so you were wrestling with that of like, that's like, you take that so heavily of like, that makes the conversation even harder for you, because suddenly, are you allowed to charge more? Right. And then are you allowed to even spend money on your own body? And maybe in a way that, some of your clients are not. And so the reason I wanted to have Raina on the podcast, guys, is I realize maybe a lot of you aren't listening are not in a helping profession or not in the same situation, but we all have a reason in our mind why we feel we can't spend money on ourselves, or why we feel that it's wrong, or it's bad, or it's greedy, or it's maybe not frugal, but not appropriate. It's just like unwise. And so Raina, I know you said you actually got a financial coach, which is big. Like, first off, you have to pay money to someone to pay money for that. But then what were some of the things that you saw come through that, or what were some of the things you learned that helped you walk through that?
Totally. I mean, I think I started to learn more and more about my own agency in owning my own business. Um, it's easy to fall into black and white thinking about I either need a sliding scale or I need to charge $500. I mean, I'm exaggerating, right? And I learned more and more about the ways that I could structure my business and set it up for long-term success, and also create opportunities to provide things that were accessible at different levels, right? Too, so that I have that diversity in my reach, but I'm also serving myself and laying a foundation so that, maybe someday I can do more pro bono work. So I really started to explore just other models, other people. And I honestly really turned to my community too, who were all, for the most part, just over the top, encouraging of me and like validating that the fee I decided to charge, that I was worth it with 2 master's degrees, right? And a certification teaching yoga, among other training that I've paid thousands of dollars for.
Yes. Yes. One thing I wanted to share, and I think I'm gonna share this now, is this story I was thinking of that I heard actually from a sales coach a little while ago. And I know that you just talked about paying thousands of dollars, and like when someone comes to you, Raina, you have a lot of experience, and when someone has their first conversation with you, their second, whatever, you don't bring just an hour to their life. You bring thousands of hours of experience and knowledge and know-how. And so here's the story. When you're buying health, or when you're buying improvement in anything, I think sometimes we can get a little iffy if we're trying to get the lowest hourly rate, perhaps.
Right.
And
Yep.
and while let's be wise with our money, what you really actually want to be buying is results. Right. And so if I could come to you, Raina, and spend 5 hours with you, or like 5 sessions, and maybe that's not necessarily realistic, but like maybe I know I have clients who come to me and in 5 sessions have gotten what they want. If I could go to you and in 5 sessions make huge like breakthrough in my, I'd say my somatics, my body, and my mind and my emotions and my stability, that's worth way more to me than having to spend 15 hours or 20 hours or 500 hours with somebody and either not get results or it literally just take more time. And so the story goes by this: when we buy something, there's this there's this cruise ship, and on the cruise ship, it's a maiden voyage of this beautiful new cruise ship. And the captain is about to turn on the boat and get it going, and they're full. They have everybody in it. They're ready to go, and everyone's so excited. This cruise ship is gonna get going, and then when they go to turn it on, it doesn't turn on. And I think this happens to us in our lives. I know this happens in our lives where we go to get out of bed and then the pain hits, like you have this moment. And so the captain is like so embarrassed. He's so ashamed. And they immediately start scrounging, and all the engineers on the boats are like, we can't figure out what's going on. And they change something and they restart it and it doesn't turn on, and they change something else and they tell the captain to restart it and it doesn't turn on. And now they're panicking. And I think that happens to us. We like change something in our diet. We like do a little something here. We do a little dance, and we're like, and then we like start the next day thinking maybe it'll get better. And then it doesn't. And so the captain's like, what can you do to fix this? And one of the engineers on the boats is like, okay, we know the guy who actually built the boat, he retired recently. And so that's why he's not here. And the captain's like, get me that man. So a couple hours pass, the guy comes on. He's this old guy, and he's just wearing normal clothes, and he's not even carrying any tools, and just has this little red wrench in his coat pocket. And they're all like, is this guy actually going to fix something? All the engineers are like, seriously? And he walks on the boat and he's just taking his time, and he takes out his little red wrench and he starts tapping different parts of the boat. And he's tapping and he's tapping and he's just listening. And they're all like, this man's crazy. What's going on? And after just a few minutes, he's tapping some of the plumbing, and he taps and he taps and he goes back to another one, And then he like nods and he taps 3 times. Tap, tap, tap. And then he looks at the engineers and he says, "Tell the captain to turn on the boat." And the captain turns on the boat and it turns on. And they're all so excited and the captain's relieved. And they're like, "We have a schedule we need to keep. We're getting out." So they usher the guy off the boat and they head out to sea and everything's hunky-dory. A few days later, the captain receives an invoice from this engineer. And the invoice says, $13,000. And the captain's like, "What? This is ridiculous." And he's like, "I don't want to have to pay this." And so he's like, no, I know what I'm going to do. I'm smart. I'm going to ask him for an itemized receipt. So he emails the guy back and he goes, "I would like an itemized receipt of this charge." And a few minutes later, he receives a response with his itemized receipt. And what it says on it is $5, little red wrench. Knowing where to tap, $12,995. And it is in the knowing that we find our result. Like it's you knowing where to tap. And so like you went to a financial coach because she was going to know where to tap. Like you could just sit there and read all these books and do all this stuff, but like you went to somebody else. And I was just trying to think, like, I really have been wanting to share that story. I'm curious, have you ever heard that story before, Raina?
Yeah.
You have?
Yeah. So you're breaking up a little bit. I heard most of what you said, but I didn't hear that question that you
Okay, that's okay. I said, are you familiar with that story? Had you heard it before?
No, but it's so true, right? I mean, we have to kind of be curious and like interrogate a little bit more than we just like kind of autopilot do, right? Like here we are, we've been actually sold this message that we can buy quick fixes, right? Like we have been sold for a long time that that's the way that we can fix ourselves, right?
Or that we can Google quick fixes.
Yes, exactly. And not that actually things take time. And that, right, like the point of your story, that the resources involved in being able to solve these mysteries, whatever they are, a broken boat or a broken back,
yeah,
take expertise, right? Take expertise and knowledge. And
what were some of the things that helped you decide to, like, you wanted to invest in your body? Like, I'm going to change it. Do you remember like key moments or what was that like for you?
Part of it, I think, is just aging, right? And thinking like, okay, I am in my 30s now. I'm going to be in my 60s, hopefully someday. And if my pain is at the level that it is now, where am I going to be then if I don't really, really invest in understanding it now and like working on it right now? I think that was the biggest thing. It was fear, but in health education, one of the things we always say is fear doesn't work unless you know what you can do about it or feel like you have self-efficacy, right? To like take action. And so, I mean, I think in a way also paying someone and actually getting the x-ray, for instance, right, that I wish that I had for 10 years.
Yeah.
That was like, oh, okay. Now I see, right? I've got someone here who's telling me this is severe and we can do something about it.
You said this is the fear?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love that. And that's interesting because there's maybe fear of, I know I have a lot of people who come to me and I can tell they're kind of afraid of things not working. There's that fear.
Yeah.
But then there's the fear of it going on. Like,
right. Exactly.
And that can be a really important and motivating thing to realize, like that for many of us, we don't want it to be an option of like wanting to be able to pick up our grandkids or for you walk your dog, and just being able to embrace that. one of the things that I found interesting is that you had to have conversations with your clients about your price raise. And
Mm-hmm.
you told me that you were actually able to kind of talk people through and almost like have like, I think I don't remember how we were talking about this, but like almost like have therapy with people around money and have some conversations.
Yeah,
Can you tell us what some of those conversations were like that you had with people, and what were some of the things that you guys talked about?
right. Well, in therapy, everything is a clinical issue, right? Because therapy is about not just ourselves and our personal emotional experience, but biologically, our emotions have so much to do with our relationships and our connections, and therapy is a relationship-based experience, right? So talking about money is really always a clinical issue, whether it's about the price, or how frequently you collect money, or how quickly someone pays you back, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
That's just a place. When I say it's a clinical issue, I don't mean it's a problem. I just mean it's a point for us to be curious about how we're engaging with it. And so it opened the door for more of those conversations, and also for, I think, one of the things you and I were talking about was like a bit of education, because it's really confusing to clients or patients or patrons or whatever, right? Why you might charge what you charge if you
Yeah.
don't have that business know-how of like what goes behind all of it, right? Like, I appreciate so much more now when I come to see you, right, and I pay you your fee. Like, it totally makes more
Mm.
sense in my body, right?
Tell me, wait,
Um,
what do you mean by that? It makes more sense in your body. I'd like to
yeah.
hear actually more about that.
Well, I think on an intellectual level, many of us might say, oh, well, so and so's worth a lot, right? They're good at their job. But it still feels like, man, but I'm really going to hand over $200 for this hour session, right? That's that, like, wondering, do we value our bodies enough? Do I value my body? And do I value this person's body, right? Who's putting in this effort?
Mm-hmm. And their
Um,
knowledge, their know-how, their ability to
yeah,
tap at the right area.
right. And do I trust that they're being honest with me about their fee, right? Do I
Yes.
trust them that they are charging what they need to live?
Also, another thing that when you were saying that reminds me of, like, do I trust myself in choosing somebody?
Yeah.
Can
Yeah.
you
Do I trust that I'm choosing the right resource?
Yeah. We actually just recorded a podcast that should be out by the time your podcast comes out. And it's going to be on like how to find a good health practitioner. And one of the things that I
Mm-hmm.
talk about as like a kind of um, cliffhanger or something, go check it out. We'll have a link in the show notes,
Uh-huh.
is when kind of like when you go to buy a car. I compared when you go to buy a car, you already know what the key features are you want. So when I go
Mm-hmm.
to, if I were to go to a chiropractor, I'm not expecting him to fix all my problems. I'm expecting
Mm-hmm.
him to fix certain ones. And I also don't go
Mm-hmm.
to just any chiropractor. I look for ones that fit a criteria. And you and I
Mm-hmm.
actually go to the same chiropractor because he's awesome. And
Mm-hmm.
also he's coming onto the podcast if he's not already on already. Things get so funny when we record and then things release later. And and what they do is they also realize that muscles hold bones in place, and so you have muscle strengthening and stretching techniques that
Mm-hmm.
they give. And so
Mm-hmm.
yes, you want to trust yourself. Do I know that's a good time to start maybe blogging, like looking at blogs or reading books? So not
Mm-hmm.
so you can fix yourself almost as much
Mm-hmm.
as you know how to find somebody who can.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, what we're talking about too is not just the financial investment in our health, but are we engaged and informed about our health and our health care and the cost that goes into it, right?
Yeah.
Because it shouldn't be a secret. It shouldn't be
Yes.
like, okay, the doctor costs $300 for this appointment, and like,
10-minute
why does it cost
appointment.
that much? Yeah, why? Yeah.
And we actually have another episode on that that goes through the history of health insurance called Three Reasons It's Hard to Invest in Ourselves. So that's episode 23 that's coming out, or that is already out, and why it's so hard. And we'll have a link in the show notes. And we actually go through some of the reasons why there's hidden costs and hidden fees with health insurance and where it came from. Fun fact, it started in World War II, but there's a lot of reasons why the costs are hidden. And then unlike when we buy a car, I think I generally, because of just a couple things, I have an idea that a $6,000 worth of car, I know what that might include or not include. And then a $12,000 car or a $32,000 car, you kind of get an idea of what things will and or will not include. And with medicine, it takes a little bit longer. It's not nearly as clear to understand how much things are costing, because we're not seeing prices. We're being told that we shouldn't be paying. Everything should be covered by health insurance, which isn't the case with like car insurance. Car insurance doesn't pay for everything. It doesn't pay for gas and oil. And so it's just hard. Then our heart comes and we're hurting and we're in pain and we don't trust ourselves and no one's taught us how to look for anybody. And we just want a quick solution because we're in pain. And it's a very sensitive place to be. It takes time. And that's one of the reasons, like when you guys are listening, I don't want you guys to hear Raina and I be like, yeah, duh, you should pay more for your money or for your body. But our own journeys of going through that. And if you want to hear more of my journey, you can check out episode 33, where we talk about how I made a mistake with finding a chiropractor and paid someone money who was not good and wasted money, but then like how I use that to learn and questions you can use to find someone who's good. So like there's so much compassion around this whole thing.
Yeah,
well,
totally.
Raina, I know that you had a somatic, not experience, like, I don't know what you call it. Practice. Something to involve our body to actually engage with this topic. I don't know what it is, guys. I'm going to let over the reins to Raina, and Raina, you're going to take care of everything until you say you're done.
Okay, great. So I think the first thing for framing is recognizing that, like I said, right, our emotions are so much about our relationships and our sense of security and physical, emotional, relational, systemic, safety, whatever, right? And so there are different things that we use as resources to help us feel that safety, if it's there, right? It's not always there, but that's the truth of it, right? And even financially, there are definitely going to be people listening. There are many people in the world who just don't make enough to be able to decide how they want to use their money to resource themselves, right? There are more bills than there's money coming in the door. But whether you're there and you're struggling financially, or even if you have an abundance of money, right? Or even if you're somewhere in the middle, money is a resource, just like an emotional coping skill we might use, just like a hug from someone, calling someone and talking on the phone. It is not just an object, it carries emotional weight that we feel in our bodies. And we might not always be conscious of it, but it's there. So I wanted people to sort of drop in for a moment, but first just kind of look around your space. I always like this because this gives you a chance to really let the body register where you are and that you're hopefully very safe in this physical space that you're in. So you can look around, and for the body nerds, you kind of want your shoulders, your psoas, your hips to engage here. So you're not just staying still, but maybe kind of twisting through the torso, pulling hips back. Like your whole body gets to engage in this orientation. So looking around. And then find the ground. So that could be literally feet on the ground, or it could be feeling yourself in your chair or your bed or your car seat. Be mindful if you're driving. And just feel what's touching the ground, the chair. Let yourself drop into now. I'm totally okay if that's challenging. Just kind of take note. Yeah. So feeling the ground, the chair, whatever's sort of touching, whatever is gravity's pulling you into. And one of the things that we do in somatics is that we track and notice our physical experience. So that involves our thoughts, our emotions, what our five senses are picking up on, what movements or impulses, voluntary or involuntary in the body that we're noticing, and what body sensations we're experiencing. So just start to notice what happens in your body when you think about money. Is there a constriction? Is there an opening? Is it pleasant, unpleasant? Maybe noticing the thoughts that come into your head, maybe noticing what emotions come up, maybe feeling into body sensations, or just noticing memories. And we're just noticing without judgment here. Because the point is, right, this isn't all cognitive. We don't just make decisions. Our body tells us what decisions we feel comfortable making. What's your body's general attitude towards money? And you might notice how comfortable you even are being with what comes up. And the invitation is not to force anything here, but just to notice and then maybe stay with. So if your tendency is to avoid what you're feeling, staying with for a moment. If your tendency is to maybe obsess, just seeing if you can hold yourself a little bit back from diving too deep cognitively. And notice now what happens in your body when I ask you, are you making enough money? What does your body want to do? And if there's any big feedback coming from your body, maybe physical sensation or sort of like a tensing, just bring your hand there. Just as if to say, like, hey, I'm here with you as you're feeling what you're feeling. Now I want you to think about, how do you spend money on your health? How do you feel about how you spend money on your health? Just noticing, almost like an outside observer a little bit, bird's eye view of what's happening in the body and even in the mind. As you think about if you make enough money and how you spend that money on your health and well-being. And then the invitation now is to bring one hand to the heart if it's not already there, or you can keep your hand where it's at. That's totally fine. But an invitation to bring one hand to the heart and one hand to the back of your head. So like the base of your skull, the top of your neck. And then from here, you can experiment. You can keep the hand at the base of the skull and bring your other hand on your forehead instead of your heart. To see if you can find somewhere. This practice is called self-holding. Kind of hold yourself here. So it's partly, I think, what happens when we get in touch with these layers of sensation and emotion is we kind of get in touch with old parts of ourselves, maybe even young parts of ourselves that carry burdens and trauma and stories around money and our self-worth and how we should spend our money. And I just want to see if you can set an intention to start to be with these parts of you that hold emotions, assumptions, beliefs, behaviors, patterns around your money, how you spend it, how you earn it, and how it contributes to your well-being physically, emotionally, spiritually, relationally. Because the first step of any somatic embodiment, like long-term practice, is just to notice and be curious. We're not trying to change anything today. We just dropped a lot of information and reflections on you. Maybe some about your experience professionally, some about your experience as a consumer of health, maybe elements in there related to the ways that you're privileged or the ways that you're oppressed. And knowing that our money and relationship to money is often intergenerational, both emotionally and behaviorally. We can just approach with curiosity instead of forcing change and see if we can hope and trust that we can continue to be in communication with ourselves and sort of working towards what feels like a healthy connection to our finances. Let a full breath move in and out. If the intention comes across as a phrase, hold that in your mind's eye. If the intention comes across in some somatic sensation, hold that. Just a couple more moments here. And then slowly start to let your body come back to some normal position. Maybe wiggle your fingers and toes. Slowly open your eyes. Thank you.
I am so not wanting to break what Raina just did for us. I have to admit. Raina, first off, thank you.
Yeah.
Second off, I wish we were in a big room, even a
Yeah.
virtual room, honestly, just a room where people could share what they just experienced. Like, wow. I mean, guys, if you want to share what you experienced, come onto our Instagram page. We have a post and a comment. And if you just want to like find some other people and be like, wow, I experienced stuff, like I experienced a roller coaster of experiences. And I can imagine working with you, Raina. I bet that you can both guide people and let them do their own thing. But then there's also, I'm sitting here being like, I'm something called a verbal processor. And
Yeah.
like, then of course someone can tell you, and you could even say, what are you feeling? And then they'd be able to share and process, even still with what I like that you said, that this is about curiosity. And it's also not about changing anything yet. And I think that's so helpful in
Yeah.
healing. I bet you could talk a lot about it. I know I think some of the biggest things I've seen in my own healing and my clients' healing is when we take off that pressure to change
Yeah.
and to fix. I need this fixed right now. And then
Right.
suddenly you're just okay with yourself. You're okay with the fact
Yeah.
that I had a memory come up I had not thought of in a long time, of being afraid I would be homeless when I grew up. And that had nothing to do with my parents or family financial situation. It had to do with one comment my mom had made out of compassion. And this is so silly. She said something like, she had compassion for homeless people because she really felt like they're not too different than, like, we're not so far separated from them as we think we are. And we did a lot of homeless ministry growing up, and I internalized that so strongly that I kind of felt like, oh, I'm sure I could fall into homelessness any moment.
Yeah.
And when we were doing that practice just now, that popped into my head, and I am remembering how hard it was to learn how to spend even 50 cents more on myself to get non-dairy milk in my latte. Like 50 cents was such a, like, oh, maybe I should just get black coffee, because is it worth the 50 cents? And so just for any of our listeners realizing, this would be a great time to journal, even just so you can remember what you experienced, to share it on our
Yeah.
Instagram, or
Yeah.
honestly work with Raina.
Yeah, totally. I have openings, and also like start these conversations with your people, right? Because money is something that we don't talk about, but I absolutely think we should. I bought a house last year, and I actually really loved how open people seem to be about talking about how much they paid for their homes, right? And I was like, why do we talk about this, but we don't talk about other things, right? And I know
Right.
there's also stigma around talking about how much you paid for your home, um, but yeah, the more that we talk, I think the more that contributes to, it's not something that has to hide in secret and shame.
Yes. 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 Ah, so beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, Raina, thank you so much for guiding us today, for
Yeah.
being vulnerable and sharing your story. Thank you also for just bringing in, we weren't even able to dive into it very much, but the fact that there's intergenerational stuff, there's racial things going on, there's oppression, and you really very gently at least address that they're all players. They're all players in the conversation on money, and there's no judgment. There's just realization that, and embracing where we are, where we've been, and that knowing that helps us at least have an idea of where we can go and where we are going.
Yeah, totally.
So on that
Absolutely.
note, a little bit, I do want to share with listeners that Raina has a freebie. She has a resource for y'all that she's created. It's called the Self-Care Syllabus, and we're going to have a link in
Mhm.
the show notes. But Raina, can you tell us about it? It sounds awesome, and
Yeah.
please explain it.
Yeah, so I developed the self-care syllabus like 5 or so years ago, during the time when I feel like self-care was really becoming like a social media thing, an Instagram thing. I was in school at the time, and I feel like self-care is something that's often talked about in academic spaces. I think it's become such a buzzword, but the actual sort of concept of self-care really comes out of the ways that women and people of color, women of color, have had to invest in caring for themselves in a system that doesn't make that care easily accessible.
Hey, Raina.
Facilitate it, right?
Oh, we
And
lost you
there's
for
just,
a second, Raina. Could
oh,
you,
what is,
you lost
yeah,
right around the time where you saying Black women and people of color, I think you said?
right, yeah. So women and women of color, I think especially, the self-care movement really came from them realizing that, oh, this healthcare system isn't actually set up in our favor, and there are ways that we have to care for ourselves. So the idea is not, fluffy self-care, but really that there are really deep foundational ways that to care for ourselves. Care isn't provided for us, right? Did I break up again?
Yeah, and you were telling us that you had sections, like there's different sections in there. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so there are sections that you can find literal resources for. Where can I do yoga online? There are sections that talk about the politicized nature of self-care and racialized trauma. There are sections for teachers and educators and therapists. There are sections specifically for understanding stress and trauma. So, my goal is really for people to be informed consumers of their health, informed about the logistics, the politics of it, the emotions of it, the history of it, as much as possible.
I'm downloading this. I'm getting this
Yeah.
resource. Yeah, guys, she sold me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
check that out. We're going to have a link in the show notes for y'all where you can check out Raina's self-care syllabus and also follow her on Instagram and check out our website. She is so awesome. And Raina, it's such an honor that you came on and shared a little bit of your education, a little bit of your experience, and helped encourage us in all of our journeys on our health.
Thank you so much for having me. I'll just say, on Instagram as well, I do have some short somatic practices. And like you said, people, reach out to you, write comments on the blog, the podcast post. Reach out to me as well. I want to hear what you like, what works, what doesn't, questions. I love interacting.
So good. Well, thank you, Raina, for being on the Better Belly podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Beginning of this episode, I invited you all to think about your own health story and if guilt or shame may be causing you to hold back in your health. For Raina, she has been working through multiple layers of mindset to come to the point of being all right with investing in her health. I love what she said in the middle of the episode. By making my life accessible to others, I was becoming inaccessible to myself. When she said this, a million lights went off in my head. This experience applies to so many women. Even if you are not a business owner, social worker, or even employed, you may be a mother, daughter, wife, partner. You sacrifice your own preferences, your time, and your money for your kids, your husband, and those around you. And while that is good, can you do the same for yourself? Woo! That is hard for even me to say, but it is so needed. You are important. You are valuable. Your body is valuable, and your body enables you to do what you need to do on a daily and hourly basis. You are worth it. You truly are. And there are answers out there for your health. I found them, my clients have found them, and if you check out testimonials in episodes 21 and 13, those are 2 stories of clients of mine that I found those answers. I've met also so many other phenomenal health practitioners that have done the same for their clients. You've got this, and you are worth it. If you like this episode and want to stay connected, you can find Better Belly Therapies on Instagram at Better Belly Therapies. Like us, follow us, say hello, let us know what you loved about this episode. I love connecting with our listeners. Also, if you loved this episode and you thought of a friend while you were listening to it, I encourage you, take a quick screenshot and send it to that friend. I cannot think of how many times I'm told that these podcast episodes are encouraging and enlightening to our listeners. And if you thought of someone while you were listening, it might be life-giving to them too. For now, I'll end us with our podcastly quote: "Miracles are immediate, but healing takes time."